Sometimes the loneliest souls find each other in the most unexpected places. For Cole Rafferty, a man who'd spent 40 years running from his past, that place was a frozen mountainside where a stray dog appeared at his campfire one winter night. The dog was thin and cautious, but something in its eyes told Cole it wasn't just looking for food. When a fierce blizzard struck, the animal led him through the storm to a hidden cave. Inside wasn't rock and stone, but a metal door that had been waiting decades to be opened. Behind that door lay the truth about his brother's death and secrets from a war that changed everything. But what was his brother really protecting all those years ago? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The wind had been howling for 3 days straight, carrying with it the kind of cold that settled deep in a man's bones and refused to leave. Cole Rafferty pulled his wool coat tighter around his shoulders as he fed another log to the fire, watching the flames dance against the darkness that seemed to press in from all sides. At 62, he'd weathered more storms than he cared to count. But this one felt different, heavier somehow, as if the mountain itself was trying to tell him something. His camp sat in a natural hollow between two granite outcroppings, a shelter he'd discovered years ago when the weight of civilization had become too much to bear. The place had no name on any map, which suited Cole just fine. Names drew attention, and attention brought questions he wasn't ready to answer. Out here, 3 days' hard ride from the nearest town, a man could exist without explanations, without the burden of who he used to be. The coffee in his tin cup had gone cold again, but Cole sipped it anyway, more for the ritual than the warmth. 40 years of solitude had taught him to find comfort in small things. The sound of wind through pine needles, the way morning light caught on fresh snow, the simple satisfaction of a well-built fire. These were the constants in a life that had known precious few of them. He'd come to these mountains after the funeral, after standing beside a fresh grave and realizing he was the last Rafferty left walking this earth. His brother Michael had been 3 years younger but a lifetime wiser, the kind of man who could read the weather in a horse's ears or find water in country that looked bone dry. Michael had been everything Cole wasn't: steady, reliable, rooted to something larger than himself. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd spent decades running from the very stability his brother had represented. While Michael built a life, raised a family, and served his country with quiet distinction, Cole had wandered from job to job, town to town, never staying long enough to form attachments that might complicate his inevitable departure. He'd told himself it was freedom, but sitting alone in these mountains, he'd come to understand it for what it really was: cowardice. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling up into the darkness, and Cole's thoughts drifted to their last conversation. It had been brief, stilted, full of the awkward pauses that marked conversations between brothers who'd grown into strangers. Michael had called to invite him to Christmas dinner, the same invitation he'd extended every year for the past decade. And like every year before, Cole had found an excuse: work that couldn't wait, weather that might turn. A dozen reasonable-sounding lies that boiled down to the simple truth that he didn't deserve a place at that table. "Maybe next year," he'd said. The words coming easily after so much practice. Michael's response had been different that time, touched with something Cole couldn't quite identify. Not hurt. Michael had moved past that years ago, but something deeper, more final. "Sure, Cole, maybe next year." 3 weeks later, Michael was dead. Heart attack while checking on his cattle during a late spring blizzard. He'd been found the next morning, his horse standing patient guard over a man who'd lived every day of his life with purpose and intention. The funeral had been standing room only, filled with neighbors and friends and fellow veterans who spoke of Michael's service, his character, his unwavering dedication to family and community. Cole had stood at the back, feeling like an intruder at the celebration of a life he'd barely been part of. When people asked who he was, he'd simply said he was family from out of state, leaving it at that. Better to be a stranger than to be remembered as the brother who couldn't be bothered to come home for Christmas. After the service, after the condolences and the casseroles and the slow dissolution of a community's grief, Cole had cleaned out Michael's house. His brother's widow, Sarah, had remarried years ago and moved to Oregon with her new husband and the children she'd raised with Michael. She'd been kind but distant, offering Cole first choice of Michael's belongings before the estate sale. Most of it had been ordinary. Furniture, clothes, the accumulated possessions of a life well lived. But in Michael's study, Cole had found something that stopped him cold. A wooden box, locked, with his own name carved into the lid in Michael's careful handwriting. Inside had been letters, dozens of them, each one addressed to Cole and dated over the span of 20 years. Letters that had never been sent. The first few had been simple updates about family life, weather, local news. But as the years progressed, they'd grown more personal, more urgent. Michael had written about their father's death, about Cole's failure to attend the funeral, about holidays spent with an empty chair at the table. He'd written about worry, about wondering if his brother was alive or dead, about the slow acceptance that came with loving someone who couldn't love you back. The last letter had been different, shorter, more direct, dated just 2 months before Michael's death. In it, he'd written about dreams that felt more like memories, about things he'd seen during his military service that didn't make sense, about a responsibility he'd inherited and couldn't explain. The letter had ended with a single line that had haunted Cole ever since. "If something happens to me, the truth is buried where we used to hunt. Follow the old trail to Standing Bear Rock. You'll know what to do." Cole had read that letter 100 times, trying to make sense of it. Michael had always been the practical one, not given to flights of fancy or cryptic messages. But there it was, written in his brother's steady hand, a puzzle that felt like both a gift and a burden. That had been 2 months ago. 2 months of carrying those words around like stones in his pocket, of trying to convince himself that grief was making him see mysteries where none existed. But the mountains had called to him with the same insistence as Michael's words, and eventually Cole had stopped fighting both. He'd loaded his pack with enough supplies for a month and ridden into the high country, following old game trails that he and Michael had explored as boys. The years had changed some things, fallen trees blocking familiar paths, new rock slides altering the landscape, but the bones of the place remained the same. Memory was a powerful compass when a man finally decided to trust it. Standing Bear Rock had been their secret place, a natural stone formation that looked like a massive bear rearing up on its hind legs. They discovered it during a hunting trip when Cole was 16 and Michael 13. 2 boys, feeling very grown up in the wilderness their grandfather had taught them to navigate. They'd carved their initials in a hidden spot and sworn it would be their secret forever. The kind of oath that means everything when you're young and nothing when you're old enough to know better. But Cole had remembered, and 3 days ago he'd found the rock again, weathered but unmistakable. He'd set up camp nearby, partly from nostalgia and partly from the practical consideration that the area offered good shelter and water. If Michael had hidden something here, Cole figured patience would serve him better than frantic searching. The storm had arrived that evening, as if summoned by his presence. Not unusual for this time of year, but fierce enough to pin him down and give him too much time to think. He'd spent the daylight hours exploring the area around Standing Bear Rock, looking for signs of disturbance, for anything that might indicate where Michael had buried his truth. But the mountain kept its secrets, and Cole had begun to wonder if he was chasing ghosts. Then this morning the dog had appeared. Cole couldn't say exactly when he'd first noticed it. One moment he'd been alone with his coffee and his doubts, and the next there had been movement at the edge of his vision, a shape, low and cautious, watching him from behind a cluster of pine trees. When he'd turned to look directly, it had vanished, leaving him to wonder if loneliness was finally playing tricks on his mind. But the tracks in the snow had been real enough. Paw prints, medium-sized, circling his camp in a wide arc. The animal had been curious but careful, studying him from a distance before disappearing back into the forest. Cole had seen plenty of wildlife in his years in the mountains. Bears, wolves, elk, countless smaller creatures, but this felt different, deliberate, intelligent. The dog had returned at sunset, bolder this time, sitting just at the edge of the firelight where shadows met flame. It was a mixed breed. Cole could see now, probably part German Shepherd with something else thrown in. Its coat was thick and dark, built for mountain winters, but its ribs showed through its fur, speaking of lean times and hard living. Most striking were its eyes, amber-colored and steady, holding a kind of patient intelligence that made Cole feel like he was being evaluated rather than merely observed. "Well," Cole had said, his voice rusty from disuse, "you planning to sit there all night? Or are you going to introduce yourself?" The dog had tilted its head at the sound of his voice, but hadn't moved closer. Smart, Cole thought. Caution had kept it alive this long in country that didn't forgive mistakes. Cole had torn off a piece of jerky and tossed it halfway between them. The dog had watched the meat land in the snow, but hadn't moved to take it, its gaze fixed on Cole's face instead. They'd stayed like that for nearly an hour, man and dog studying each other across the gap of firelight, until finally the animal had risen and melted back into the darkness as silently as it had come. The jerky had been gone by morning. Now, on the third night of the storm, Cole found himself waiting for his visitor's return. The wind had picked up again, driving snow horizontally across his camp and making the fire struggle against its fury. He'd built a windbreak earlier, piling rocks and deadfall to create a pocket of relative calm. But even so, the storm seemed determined to remind him how small and temporary his presence was in this vast wilderness. The dog materialized from the storm like something conjured from his thoughts, appearing suddenly in the circle of firelight, as if it had always been there. This time, it didn't hesitate at the edge of the camp, but walked directly to the spot where Cole had thrown the jerky the night before. It sat down, fixed him with that steady amber gaze, and waited. "Hungry again?" Cole asked, reaching for his pack. This time, when he threw the meat, the dog caught it mid-air and swallowed it in 2 quick bites. Then it sat back down, still watching, still waiting. "That's all I can spare tonight," Cole said. "Storm keeps up like this, I'll be rationing for both of us." The dog cocked its head again, as if considering his words, then did something that made Cole's breath catch in his throat. Around its neck, partially hidden by its thick fur, was a collar. Not just any collar, but one that looked hand-tooled, worn smooth by years of use. And hanging from it, glinting in the firelight, was something that made Cole's heart race, a small metal tag, but not the kind that held a pet's name and address. This was military issue, the kind of dog tag that soldiers wore into battle. Even from across the fire, Cole could see lettering etched into its surface, though he couldn't make out the words. "Where did you get that, boy?" he whispered. The dog stood, shook the snow from its coat, and turned to look out into the storm. For a moment it stood motionless, as if listening to something Cole couldn't hear. Then it looked back at him, took 3 steps toward the edge of camp, and stopped. It looked back again, then forward, then back to Cole. The message was unmistakable. "Follow me." Cole felt something shift in his chest, a combination of excitement and dread that he hadn't experienced since he was a young man facing uncertain choices. The rational part of his mind catalogued all the reasons why following a stray dog into a blizzard was the height of foolishness. But another part, the part that had been dormant for 40 years, recognized this moment for what it was. The answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. "All right," he said, standing slowly. "Let's see what you want to show me." He banked the fire, secured his camp as best he could, and pulled on his heaviest coat. The dog waited patiently as he gathered what he'd need, a flashlight, his rifle, rope, the basic tools of mountain survival. When he was ready, it turned and padded into the storm, its dark form barely visible against the swirling snow. Cole followed, his boots crunching through drifts that reached his knees, his face already numb from the wind. The dog moved with purpose, never hesitating at game trails or natural landmarks, as if it knew exactly where it was going. They climbed steadily, working their way up slopes that Cole recognized from boyhood adventures, following a route that skirted the base of Standing Bear Rock. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, the dog stopped. They were on a narrow ledge that Cole remembered, a place where he and Michael had once taken shelter during a sudden summer storm. But something was different. Where there had once been solid rock, there was now an opening. Not a natural cave, but something else entirely. Cole clicked on his flashlight and felt his world tilt on its axis. Set into the mountain face was a door, not wood or stone, but metal, seamless and unmarked except for a small panel at chest height. The surface was dull grey, untouched by rust despite decades of mountain weather, and it fit so perfectly into the rock that it seemed to have grown there. The dog walked up to the door and barked once, a sharp sound that echoed off the surrounding cliffs. There was a soft hiss, like air escaping from a pressurized container, and the door began to move. Not swinging open on hinges, but sliding aside with the whisper-quiet precision of well-maintained machinery. Beyond the threshold lay darkness. But Cole's flashlight revealed the beginning of a corridor that extended into the mountain. The walls were the same grey metal as the door, smooth and featureless, with small lights embedded at regular intervals. The air that flowed out was warmer than the night outside and carried scents that spoke of recycled air and metal and something else, something that reminded Cole of his brother's workshop. The dog looked back at him once, then trotted into the corridor without hesitation. Cole stood at the threshold, flashlight in hand, staring into a mystery that had been waiting 4 decades for him to find it. His brother's words echoed in his memory. "You'll know what to do." Standing there in the storm, with snow swirling around him and the impossible door waiting, Cole realized that Michael had been right. He did know what to do, even if he didn't understand it yet. He stepped through the doorway and into his brother's secret. The corridor stretched ahead of them, bathed in the soft glow of embedded lights that flickered to life as they walked. Cole's flashlight beam danced across walls that looked like nothing he'd ever seen. Not carved stone or poured concrete, but something that seemed to have been shaped from a single piece of metal. The dog trotted ahead with the confidence of familiarity, its nails clicking against a floor that felt solid despite its impossibly smooth surface. Cole's mind reeled as he tried to process what he was seeing. This wasn't some abandoned mine shaft or natural cave formation. This was engineered, built with a precision and technology that didn't belong in these mountains. The air was warm and clean, circulated by systems he couldn't see but could hear humming quietly in the walls. Everything spoke of careful maintenance, of a facility that had been kept operational despite its hidden location. "What the hell were you into, Michael?" he whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the metal corridor. The dog paused and looked back at him, its amber eyes reflecting the artificial light. For a moment, Cole could have sworn he saw something almost human in that gaze, understanding, maybe even sympathy. Then the animal turned and continued deeper into the mountain. They walked for what felt like a quarter-mile, the corridor sloping gently downward and branching occasionally into smaller passages. Cole noted each junction, marking their route in his mind, the way his grandfather had taught him to track game trails. Getting lost in here would be more than inconvenient. It could be fatal. The corridor ended at another door, this one marked with symbols Cole didn't recognize. The dog sat down in front of it and barked once, the same sharp sound that had opened the entrance. There was that familiar hiss of pressurized air, and the door slid aside to reveal a vast chamber that made Cole's breath catch in his throat. The room was enormous, carved from the living rock of the mountain and fitted with the same seamless metal surfaces as the corridor. Banks of equipment lined the walls, screens, control panels, devices whose purpose Cole couldn't begin to guess. But it was what occupied the center of the chamber that made his knees weak. 3 vehicles sat in the middle of the room, each one unlike anything he'd ever seen. They were sleek and angular, about the size of small aircraft, but clearly built for something other than flight. Their surfaces were the same dull grey metal as the walls. and they rested on landing gear that looked more suited to spacecraft than any earthly conveyance. "Jesus Christ," Cole breathed, his voice barely audible. The dog walked calmly to the nearest vehicle and sat down beside it, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Cole followed slowly, his flashlight beam playing across surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Up close, he could see that these weren't just vehicles, they were works of art, engineered with a precision that spoke of capabilities far beyond anything he'd thought possible. Movement caught his eye, and he turned to see more lights coming online throughout the chamber. Control panels flickered to life, screens filled with symbols and readouts, and somewhere in the walls, larger systems began to hum with awakening power. It was as if his presence had triggered some kind of automatic startup sequence. A new sound filled the air, mechanical, purposeful, approaching from one of the side passages. Cole raised his rifle instinctively, then lowered it as something emerged from the shadows. It moved on treads rather than legs, about waist-high with multiple arms that ended in various tools and sensors. A maintenance robot, his mind supplied. Though the technology was decades ahead of anything he'd seen, the robot approached without apparent concern for the armed man in its domain. It stopped a few feet away and extended one of its arms, which projected a holographic image into the air between them. And Cole nearly dropped his rifle as his brother's face materialized in front of him, solid and real as life. "Hello, Cole," the hologram said in Michael's voice. "If you're seeing this, then I'm dead, and you finally found what I've been protecting." Cole's throat went dry. The image was perfect. Not just Michael's face, but his mannerisms. The way he tilted his head when he was thinking, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident. This wasn't just a recording. It was somehow more than that. "I know you have questions," the hologram continued. Hell, I had the same ones when I first stumbled into this place 30 years ago. But before I explain anything, you need to understand what's at stake here." The image gestured, and the view expanded to show the chamber around them. "What you're looking at is a monitoring station, one of 12 scattered across North America. They were built in 1947, after something happened in New Mexico that changed everything. Not what the newspapers reported. That was just a cover story. What really happened was first contact." Cole's legs finally gave out, and he sat down hard on the metal floor. First contact. The words hung in the air like a physical thing, reshaping everything he thought he knew about the world. The visitors weren't hostile, Michael's image went on. They were refugees, fleeing something that was hunting them across the galaxy. They asked for sanctuary, for a place to hide and rebuild. The government agreed, but with conditions. They would help us advance our technology, but they would do it slowly, carefully, in ways that wouldn't destabilize our society. And they would maintain these monitoring stations to watch for signs of their pursuers. The hologram paused, and Cole could see something that looked like regret cross his brother's features. "I was assigned to this station in 1965, fresh out of the army and looking for purpose. They told me it was a long-term posting, that I'd be responsible for maintaining the equipment and filing reports that would probably never be read. They didn't tell me I'd be the only human contact these refugees would have, or that I'd come to think of them as friends." A new image appeared, a group of figures that were clearly not human. They were tall and slender, with elongated limbs and faces that were both alien and strangely familiar. Their eyes were large and expressive, holding an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. They called themselves the Watchers, Michael said. They'd been observing our species for centuries, trying to understand us before making contact. When their enemies finally found Earth, the Watchers had a choice: flee again or make a stand. They chose to stay, to help us prepare for what's coming. The dog had moved closer during the hologram's explanation, and now it sat pressed against Cole's leg, offering warmth and comfort that he desperately needed. Cole's hand found the animal's head automatically, his fingers working through the thick fur as his mind struggled to process what he was hearing. The technology you see here is the result of that partnership, Michael continued. The vehicles are atmospheric craft, capable of reaching any point on Earth in a matter of hours. The monitoring equipment tracks electromagnetic signatures, gravitational anomalies, anything that might indicate the arrival of hostile forces. And the dog, Michael smiled and Cole felt his heart clench with sudden loss. The dog is special. He's not entirely what he appears to be. The Watchers created him as a companion and guardian, part biological and part something else. His name is Keeper, and he's been waiting for you for 2 months. Cole looked down at the animal, at Keeper, and saw intelligence looking back at him. Not just animal intelligence, but something deeper, more complex. The dog that had led him through the storm wasn't just a stray looking for food. He was a messenger, a guardian, a bridge between 2 worlds. I know this is a lot to take in, Michael's hologram said, his voice gentle with understanding. I had weeks to adjust to the truth, and even then it nearly broke my mind. But you don't have weeks, Cole. The monitoring stations have been going dark, one by one. Something is hunting the Watchers again, and it's getting closer to Earth. The image changed to show a map of North America with 12 points of light scattered across its surface. As Cole watched, the lights began winking out, first one in Alaska, then another in northern Canada, then a third in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. 3 stations have gone silent in the past month, Michael said. This facility is the primary hub, the one that coordinates all the others. If it falls, we'll be blind when the real threat arrives. In Cole, the hologram's expression grew grave. The Watchers believe it will arrive soon. Maybe weeks, maybe days. The robot's arms retracted, and the hologram began to fade. But before it disappeared entirely, Michael stepped forward, his image becoming more solid, more real. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you any of this while I was alive, he said. The secrecy was part of the bargain, part of protecting both species. But now you're the only one left who can carry on the work. The Watchers chose our family for a reason. Cole, we have something they value, the ability to see the big picture, to put the welfare of others before our own interests. Cole wanted to speak, to ask the 1,000 questions crowding his mind, but his voice seemed to have abandoned him entirely. There's more you need to know, Michael said, his image growing fainter with each word. But first, you need to meet them. The last 3 Watchers on Earth are here, in the deep chambers. Keeper will take you to them. Trust him, Cole, trust them. And remember everything our grandfather taught us about honor and duty, about protecting those who can't protect themselves. All of that was preparation for this moment. The hologram flickered one final time. Make me proud, brother. And then Michael was gone, leaving Cole alone in a chamber full of impossible technology with a dog that wasn't entirely a dog and the weight of an entire world's future pressing down on his shoulders. Keeper stood and walked toward another passage, one that led deeper into the mountain. At the threshold, he turned back and waited, his amber eyes patient and understanding. Cole got slowly to his feet, his legs shaky but determined. Everything he thought he knew about the world had just been turned upside down. But one thing remained constant. His brother had trusted him with something important, and he wouldn't let Michael down. Not again, all right. Keeper, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Let's go meet your friends. The deeper passages felt different from the upper corridors, older somehow, as if they predated the technology that filled the main chamber. The walls here were rougher, carved from living rock, but reinforced with the same seamless metal. Keeper padded ahead with quiet confidence, his form barely visible in the soft glow of the embedded lights. Cole's mind reeled with everything he'd just learned. Alien refugees, monitoring stations, a galactic threat approaching Earth. 2 hours ago, his biggest concern had been whether his coffee supplies would last through the storm. Now he was walking into the heart of a conspiracy that stretched back to before he was born, carrying a responsibility he didn't understand and wasn't sure he could handle. The passage opened into a smaller chamber, this one clearly designed for habitation rather than technology. The space was circular, with alcoves carved into the walls that held what looked like sleeping areas. The ceiling was domed and covered with a projection of stars, not Earth's night sky, but something alien and beautiful. 3 figures stood waiting in the center of the room, and Cole's breath caught as he got his first clear look at the watchers. They were tall, as Michael had said, perhaps 7 feet in height, but so slender they seemed almost fragile. Their skin was pale, with a faint luminescence that reminded Cole of moonlight on water. Their faces were elongated, with large eyes that held depths of intelligence and sadness that spoke of losses beyond human comprehension. They wore simple garments that seemed to shift color in the light, and they moved with a grace that suggested they were not entirely bound by the same physical laws that governed human motion. The one in the center stepped forward, and when it spoke, the words formed directly in Cole's mind, rather than reaching his ears through sound. "Welcome, Cole Rafferty. I am Ethan, speaker for the Last Watch. Your brother spoke of you often." Cole's hand tightened on his rifle, though he made no move to raise it. The sensation of thoughts that weren't his own entering his mind was deeply unsettling, like having someone rearrange furniture in a room he'd lived in all his life. "You're reading my mind," he said aloud, surprised that his voice worked at all. "Not reading, communicating. Your species lacks the neural pathways for direct thought transmission, so we adapt. What you experience as intrusion is actually a gift, a temporary expansion of your natural capabilities." The explanation didn't make Cole feel any better about the situation. He'd always prized his mental privacy, the last fortress where a man could retreat when the world became too much. Having that sanctuary breached, even by beings who claimed benevolent intent, felt like a violation. Keeper moved to sit beside Ethan, and the Watcher's long fingers stroked the dog's head with obvious affection. The gesture was so human, so familiar, that it eased some of Cole's tension. "Keeper has been your brother's companion for many years," Ethan continued. "When Michael passed from this existence, Keeper mourned as deeply as any human. We gave him purpose, to find you, to bring you here when the time was right. And when was that supposed to be?" Cole asked. "Michael's been dead for 2 months," the second Watcher stepped forward, smaller than Ethan, but carrying an air of ancient authority that made Cole think of old-growth forests and deep caverns. "I am Solace, keeper of records. The timing was not of our choosing. Events have accelerated beyond our projections. The hunters moved faster than anticipated." "The hunters," Cole repeated. "That's what's been destroying your monitoring stations." "Ancient enemies," the third Watcher said, and this one's mental voice carried a chill that made Cole shiver. "I'm Nyx, Warsinger of the Lost Fleet. The hunters have pursued us across the galaxy for millennia, destroying worlds that offer us sanctuary. They cannot tolerate the existence of any species that might challenge their dominion." Cole sank onto a stone bench that had been carved into the chamber wall. The weight of cosmic conflict pressing down on him made his earthly problems seem insignificant by comparison. "Why Earth? Why not just keep running?" "Because there is nowhere left to run," Ethan replied, and Cole could feel the deep sadness that accompanied the thought. "We are the last of our kind, 3 survivors from a civilization that once spanned star systems. We chose Earth because your species shows promise, potential for growth that might one day match our own. If we fall here, both our species face extinction." The implications hit Cole like a physical blow. These beings hadn't just sought refuge on Earth. They'd made it humanity's problem, whether humans wanted it or not. "So you're using us as a shield?" "No." Nyx's mental voice was sharp, angry. "We offer alliance, partnership. Your species has qualities we lost long ago: resilience, adaptability, the capacity for rapid growth under pressure. Together, we might achieve what neither could accomplish alone. And if we refuse, the hunters will come regardless," Solace said. "They have marked this system. Your species will face them unprepared, unaware, alone. We estimate human civilization would survive perhaps 6 months." Cole stood and began pacing, his boots echoing off the stone floor. Everything they were telling him ran counter to every instinct he'd developed over 62 years of life. Trust slowly earned, verify everything, never accept responsibility for problems you didn't create. But here he was, being asked to take on the guardianship of not just his own species, but the last survivors of another. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" he said finally. "What your brother did," Ethan replied. "Maintain the monitoring stations, coordinate our defenses, serve as liaison between our species and selected members of your government." Selected members. How many people know about this? Fewer than before. The monitoring network was overseen by a small group within your military and intelligence agencies. As stations have gone dark, so have their human contacts. We believe the hunters have infiltrated your communication systems. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. "They're here already?" "Advanced scouts," Nix confirmed. "Gathering intelligence, preparing the way. The main force will follow, but not for some time." Weeks, perhaps months, the dog, Keeper, had been sitting quietly throughout the conversation. But now he stood and walked to Cole. He sat down directly in front of him and fixed him with those intelligent amber eyes. Without warning, images flooded Cole's mind, not words or concepts, but pure memory. He saw Michael working alongside the Watchers, learning their technology, becoming fluent in their silent communication. He saw the monitoring stations in their prime, staffed by dedicated humans who understood the magnitude of their responsibility. He saw the gradual shutdown of the network as the hunters drew closer. Felt Michael's growing desperation as he realized he was aging beyond his ability to maintain the system alone. And he saw himself through Michael's eyes. The brother who had run from every responsibility, every connection, every chance to be part of something larger than himself. But also the brother who had inherited their grandfather's gift for seeing patterns, for understanding complex systems, for remaining calm under pressure. "Your brother believed you were the only one who could succeed him," Ethan said gently. "He spent years preparing for this moment, learning everything we could teach him so that he could teach you." "He never said anything," Cole protested. 40 years and he never even hinted, because the knowledge would have destroyed you before you were ready. Your brother understood that wisdom comes not from the accumulation of facts, but from the willingness to accept responsibility when the moment demands it. Cole looked around the chamber, taking in the alien technology, the three beings who represented the last hope of their species. The dog who had guided him through a storm to find his destiny. Everything about the situation was impossible, overwhelming, terrifying, and yet somewhere deep in his chest he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. "Purpose. Show me," he said quietly. "Show me what I need to learn. The lessons will be difficult," Solis warned. "The technology is complex, the responsibility is enormous. You will be required to make decisions that affect the survival of 2 species. I've been running from difficult decisions my whole life," Cole said. "Maybe it's time I stopped." Ethan moved closer, and Cole could feel something like approval radiating from the tall figure. "Then we begin now. Time grows short, and there is much to learn." Keeper barked once, a sound of agreement that echoed off the stone walls. And for the first time since he'd entered the hidden facility, Cole felt like he might actually be where he belonged. The next several hours blurred together in a kaleidoscope of impossible information and alien technology. Solis led Cole through the facility's primary systems, each one more advanced than anything he'd imagined possible. The monitoring equipment could track electromagnetic signatures across the solar system, detecting spacecraft at distances that made Earth's most sophisticated radar seem primitive by comparison. "This reads gravitational distortions," Solis explained, his thoughts flowing directly into Cole's mind as they stood before a control panel covered in symbols that shifted and changed as he watched. "Hunter vessels travel by bending space-time. The signature is unmistakable once you know what to look for." Cole tried to focus on the displays. But the constant flow of telepathic information was giving him a headache that felt like someone driving nails through his skull. Could we try the old-fashioned way for a while? Speaking out loud, I mean. This mental communication thing is wearing me down. Ethan, who had been observing from across the chamber, approached with what might have been concern. When he spoke, his voice was a whisper of sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Forgive us. We forget how taxing direct communication can be for your species. Your neural pathways are not designed for the bandwidth we consider normal. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose, Cole said, rubbing his temples. Maybe we could work up to it gradually? A wise approach, Nix agreed, her voice carrying musical undertones that reminded Cole of wind through mountain pines. Your brother required weeks to adapt fully. We have been impatient in our instruction. The acknowledgement helped, but Cole still felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information they were trying to impart. The facility's technology was centuries ahead of anything on Earth, and understanding it required not just learning new facts, but accepting entirely new ways of thinking about reality. Keeper had remained at Cole's side throughout the tour, occasionally pressing against his leg when the stress became too apparent. The dog's presence was oddly comforting, an anchor of familiar warmth in a sea of alien strangeness. Tell me about Keeper, Cole said during a break in the technical instruction. Michael's hologram said he wasn't entirely what he appears to be. Ethan knelt beside the dog, his long fingers stroking the thick fur with obvious affection. Keeper represents one of our greatest achievements in biological engineering. He retains all the loyalty and emotional capacity of Earth canines while possessing enhanced intelligence and extended lifespan. His neural structure has been modified to allow limited telepathic communication and perfect recall of everything he experiences. So he's a spy. He is a guardian, Nix corrected, her tone sharp. Created to protect the humans who serve as our liaisons. Your brother faced dangers that required more than human reflexes could handle. Keeper has saved his life on more than one occasion. What kind of dangers? The three watchers exchanged glances that needed no telepathic enhancement to interpret. Reluctance, concern, the weight of bad news delivered too often. The network has not operated in isolation, Solis said finally. There are those among your species who would use our technology for their own purposes. Religious fanatics who see us as demons. Military leaders who view our presence as an invasion to be repelled. Corporate interests that would exploit our knowledge for profit. And now there are the collaborators, Nix added, her voice carrying a chill that made Cole's spine prickle. Humans who have been contacted by Hunter advanced scouts and convinced to aid their cause. Cole felt his stomach drop. Humans are working with these hunters? The hunters are masters of manipulation, Ethan explained. They offer power, knowledge, the promise of survival when the invasion comes. For some humans, the temptation is irresistible. How many? We do not know. The infiltration began months ago, possibly longer. Communication between monitoring stations was severed before we could assess the full extent of the collaboration. Cole walked to one of the viewport-like screens that showed the chamber where the three vehicles waited. The craft looked sleek and powerful, but also somehow vulnerable sitting in their hidden hangar. These ships, how many people know about them? Very few. The vehicles were our contribution to the Alliance, transportation that could reach any point on Earth within hours, capable of operating in environments that would be lethal to human aircraft. And they're just sitting here, waiting, Solis confirmed. Your brother was trained to pilot them, but in his final years, his reflexes had slowed beyond safe parameters. We have been grounded for nearly 2 years. You want me to learn to fly those things, eventually. But first, you must understand the monitoring systems. The vehicles are useless without accurate intelligence about Hunter movements. Cole turned back to the control panel Solis had been explaining. Its alien symbols still shifting and flowing in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. How long do we have? Before the main Hunter force arrives, I mean. The advanced scouts have been probing your planet's defenses for approximately 6 months, Nick said. Based on historical patterns, The main invasion force will arrive between 3 and 18 months after initial contact. That's not very precise. The hunters adapt their timeline based on resistance encountered. If they meet significant opposition, they will bring overwhelming force quickly. If they detect weakness, they may take time to position assets and eliminate potential threats. Which category do we fall into? The silence that followed his question was answer enough. Cole felt a familiar sensation in his chest, the same hollow feeling he'd experienced standing beside Michael's grave, realizing he was alone in the world. Except now it wasn't just his world that was at risk. "We're weak," he said. "It wasn't a question. You are unprepared," Ethan corrected gently. "There is a difference. Your species possesses remarkable adaptability when faced with existential threats. The question is whether we can provide enough preparation in the time remaining." Keeper barked once and trotted toward a section of the chamber Cole hadn't noticed before. The dog sat down beside what looked like a meditation area, cushions arranged in a circle around a small pool of water that seemed to glow with its own light. "He suggests we begin with the fundamentals," Solis said, "interpreting Keeper's behavior. Direct interface with our memory banks will allow you to absorb decades of accumulated knowledge in a matter of hours. More telepathic communication? Different. This is passive absorption rather than active exchange. Like reading, but faster and more comprehensive." Cole looked at the peaceful setting, then back at the incomprehensible control panels. Everything in him wanted to retreat, to return to the simple life of mountain solitude he'd known just hours before. But Michael's words echoed in his memory, and he thought about the weight his brother had carried alone for so many years. What are the risks? Information overload, temporary disorientation. In rare cases, permanent psychological damage. And if I don't do it... We face the hunters blind and unprepared. Cole walked to the meditation area and settled onto one of the cushions. The water in the pool seemed to pulse with gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat made visible. "What do I need to do?" Ethan joined him in the circle, placing one long-fingered hand on Cole's shoulder. "Simply relax. Allow your mind to open to the knowledge we offer. Trust in your ability to process what you receive, and if I can't handle it, then Keeper will guide you back to consciousness, and we will try a slower approach." The dog settled beside Cole, warm and solid against his leg. For a moment, Cole allowed himself to remember what his life had been like just days ago. Quiet, simple, free of cosmic responsibility. Then he thought about Michael, about 40 years of running from connection and purpose, about the chance to finally be part of something larger than his own solitude. "All right," he said. "Let's see what my brain can handle." Ethan's touch grew warmer, and the light from the pool seemed to expand, surrounding Cole in a gentle glow that felt like summer sunshine. As consciousness began to slip away, replaced by something vast and alien and full of impossible knowledge, Cole's last coherent thought was a prayer to whatever force had guided him to this moment. "Let me be strong enough. Let me be worthy of what Michael believed I could become." Then the universe opened its memory banks, and Cole Rafferty ceased to exist as anything but a vessel for learning. Cole awoke to the sensation of drowning in starlight. Memories that weren't his own cascaded through his consciousness, images of worlds he'd never seen, technologies beyond human comprehension, the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. He lay on the stone floor of the meditation chamber, Keeper's warm form pressed against his side, while his mind struggled to sort his own thoughts from the vast archive of Watcher knowledge now residing in his skull. "Easy," Ethan's voice said, though the Watcher remained seated across the circle. "The integration process takes time. Do not try to access everything at once." Cole sat up slowly, his head spinning with the effort. The pool of light at the center of their circle had dimmed to a gentle glow, but even that seemed too bright for his overwhelmed senses. "How long was I out?" 8 hours. Longer than your brother required, but well within safe parameters. 8 hours. Cole tried to remember what it had felt like to learn things the normal way, slowly, one fact at a time, with gaps and uncertainties that left room for doubt. Now his mind contained detailed knowledge of hunter ship designs, watcher history spanning millennia, and the technical specifications of every system in the monitoring network. The information was all there, perfectly preserved, but accessing it felt like trying to read a library while falling off a cliff. The disorientation will pass, Solis assured him from somewhere behind Cole's left shoulder. Your neural pathways are adapting to accommodate the new information. Within a day or two, the knowledge will feel natural, as if you had always possessed it. I can see the gravitational wake patterns of hunter scout ships, Cole said wonderingly. I know how to calculate hyperspace transit times and identify 17 different classes of alien technology. But I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. The immediate memories will return, Nick said. The mind prioritizes new information for a time, then achieves balance. Keeper shifted beside him, and suddenly Cole understood something that made his breath catch. The dog's presence wasn't just comfort, it was active support. Through their physical contact, Keeper was helping to regulate the flow of information in Cole's brain, preventing the kind of overload that could cause permanent damage. He's been monitoring my neural activity, Cole said, his hand finding the dog's head. Making sure I don't burn out. One of his primary functions, Ethan confirmed. Your brother required similar assistance during his first months with the network. Keeper learned to read human brain patterns and provide stabilizing influence when necessary. Cole pushed himself to his feet, surprised by how steady he felt despite the mental chaos. The knowledge transfer had been traumatic, but it had also filled gaps in his understanding that made the facility's technology suddenly comprehensible. He walked to the nearest control panel and found himself reading the flowing symbols as easily as if they were written in English. The Vancouver station went dark 4 days ago, he said, interpreting the data streams without conscious effort. Before that, Calgary and Whitehorse, the Hunter Scouts are working their way south along the Rocky Mountain corridor. Correct. The pattern suggests they are seeking something specific rather than conducting general reconnaissance. This facility. They're looking for the primary hub, most likely. If they can locate and neutralize the central monitoring station, the remaining network will be blind and defenseless. Cole studied the tactical display, seeing patterns that his enhanced understanding made clear. They're not just hunting randomly. Someone is giving them guidance, someone who knows the network's structure. Solis nodded gravely. We have reached the same conclusion. The collaborators possess detailed knowledge of our operations. How is that possible? I thought knowledge of the network was restricted to a handful of people. It was. But people retire, change loyalties, face pressures we cannot anticipate. Over 30 years, dozens of humans have had access to classified information about our presence. The implications hit Cole like a physical blow. Any one of them could be feeding information to the hunters or being coerced into cooperation, Nix added. The hunters are skilled at identifying pressure points, family members, financial difficulties, personal secrets that could be used as leverage. Cole returned to the tactical display, his new knowledge allowing him to understand the scope of what they were facing. The North American monitoring network had been vast, 12 stations stretching from Alaska to Mexico, each one capable of tracking activity across thousands of square miles. With 9 stations already compromised, they were operating nearly blind. We need to re-establish contact with the remaining stations, he said. Impossible through normal channels. The hunters have demonstrated ability to intercept and decode our communications. Then we go in person. The 3 watchers exchanged glances, and Cole felt their concern even without telepathic contact. The risk, Ethan began, is less than the risk of sitting here waiting for them to find us, Cole interrupted. If we can't coordinate with the other stations, we're just targets waiting to be eliminated. Your brother attempted such contact 3 weeks ago, Nix said quietly. He did not return. The words hit Cole like ice water. Michael, you said he died of a heart attack. He did. But the attack occurred while he was attempting to reach the Denver station. We found his body 50 miles from the facility, along with evidence of hunter technology. Cole felt anger building in his chest, hot and clean after days of confusion and fear. His brother hadn't died peacefully at home. He died alone in the mountains, trying to complete a mission that Cole should have been there to help with. Another responsibility abandoned. Another connection severed by his own cowardice. "Show me the route he took," Cole said. Solis activated a three-dimensional map that filled the air above the control panel. A red line traced Michael's path from the primary station toward Denver, ending at a point marked with a pulsing indicator. "The Denver facility is here," Solis explained, highlighting a location in the Colorado Rockies. "Your brother's vehicle was found here, approximately 47 miles short of his destination." Vehicle? One of the atmospheric craft. Michael was the only human qualified to pilot them. Cole studied the map, his enhanced knowledge providing tactical insights that would have been impossible hours earlier. The route takes him through 3 mountain passes, all of them natural choke points. "Perfect for an ambush. We believe the hunters were tracking his approach," Ethan said. "Their technology is superior to ours in many respects, but they didn't destroy his craft. They forced him down and then killed him on the ground." Cole traced the route with his finger, seeing possibilities that his brother might have missed. Michael was thinking like a pilot, fast, direct, efficient. But the hunters were thinking like hunters. They knew where he was going and got there first. "You are suggesting a different approach?" "I'm suggesting we think like prey instead of predators. Move carefully, use terrain for concealment, avoid the obvious routes." Cole turned to face the 3 watchers. "But first, I need to learn to fly one of those ships." "The training is complex," Nix warned. "Your brother required months to achieve basic proficiency. Then we'd better start now." Keeper barked once and trotted toward the chamber's exit, clearly understanding that their planning session was moving to the next phase. Cole followed, feeling the weight of downloaded knowledge settling more comfortably in his mind. The disorientation was fading, replaced by a clarity of purpose he hadn't experienced. Since he was young, he thought about Michael making this same transition 30 years ago, a young man accepting responsibility for protecting 2 species from an enemy he barely understood. At least Cole had the advantage of his brother's experience, painful as that knowledge was to acquire. In the main hangar, the 3 atmospheric craft waited like sleeping predators. Cole approached the nearest one, running his hand along its smooth hull. Through his enhanced understanding, he could sense the craft's capabilities, speeds that would make military jets seem motionless, maneuverability that defied conventional physics, stealth systems that could render it invisible to most forms of detection. "This one," he said, choosing instinctively. "When do we start?" "Now," Ethan replied. "Time grows short, and the next attack could come at any moment." As the craft's hull began to part, revealing an interior that seemed larger than the external dimensions would allow, Cole felt a familiar sensation, the same mixture of fear and excitement he'd experienced as a young man facing uncertain choices. The difference was that now he understood what was at stake. This time, he wouldn't run from the responsibility. This time, he would be ready. The interior of the atmospheric craft defied every assumption Cole had about aircraft design. There were no traditional controls, no joystick, no instrument panel filled with gauges and switches. Instead, he found himself in a circular chamber with a single seat at the center, surrounded by surfaces that seemed to flow and shift like liquid metal. When he settled into the pilot's chair, the walls came alive with displays that responded to his presence, showing views of the hangar from angles that suggested the craft possessed sensory capabilities far beyond simple cameras. "The interface is bioneural," Ethan explained, standing beside the craft as its systems activated. "The ship reads your intentions and translates them into action. Physical controls are unnecessary, so I just think about where I want to go, and it takes me there. The process is more complex than that. You must learn to communicate with the craft's intelligence, to form a cooperative partnership rather than attempting to impose control." Cole leaned back in the seat, feeling surfaces that molded themselves to his body like living tissue. "The ship is alive?" Not in the biological sense, but possessed of awareness nonetheless. Watcher technology blurs the distinction between machine and organism. What you call artificial intelligence, we consider simply another form of consciousness. The concept should have been disturbing, the idea of merging his mind with an alien intelligence. But Cole found it oddly comforting. The downloaded knowledge helped him understand that Watcher technology was built on principles of cooperation rather than domination. The craft wouldn't overpower his will. It would amplify and enhance it. How do I begin? Close your eyes. Focus on the sensation of flight, not the mechanics, but the experience itself. The craft will respond to emotional resonance as much as conscious intent. Cole followed the instructions, letting his mind drift to memories of soaring eagles he'd watched from mountain peaks. The craft responded immediately, surfaces around him shifting to provide different support angles, displays changing to show aerodynamic information he could somehow interpret without conscious effort. Good, Nick said from somewhere outside the ship. The craft recognizes your intent to fly. Now you must learn to communicate your destination. Denver, Cole said aloud. Nothing happened. Specificity is required, Solis explained. The craft needs more than a city name. Visualize the exact location, coordinates, terrain features, approach vectors. Cole accessed his enhanced memory, calling up detailed topographical data about the Denver monitoring station. The information flowed through his consciousness with crystal clarity. Elevation, latitude and longitude, surrounding geography, even historical weather patterns. As the data crystallized in his mind, the craft's displays changed to show a three-dimensional map of the Rocky Mountains with a route plotted in glowing lines. Excellent, Ethan said. But before we attempt actual flight, you must understand the craft's limitations. Speed and maneuverability come at the cost of vulnerability to certain forms of detection, hunter sensors, among others. The craft can achieve near invisibility to human technology, but hunter ships employ quantum resonance scanning that can penetrate most stealth systems. Cole studied the plotted route, seeing potential problems that his tactical knowledge made obvious. The direct path takes us over 3 major cities and 2 military installations. If the hunters are monitoring those areas precisely, your brother's final mission failed because he chose speed over stealth. We cannot afford to repeat that mistake. Then we go low and slow. Use terrain masking, avoid population centers, stay below radar coverage. Cole manipulated the route display with thought alone, plotting a path that wound through mountain valleys and followed natural terrain features. It'll take longer, but will be harder to track. The revised route reduces travel time from 40 minutes to 3 hours. Solis noted, better than not arriving at all. Keeper had been sitting quietly at the edge of the hangar, but now he approached the craft and barked once. The ship's entrance expanded to accommodate him, and the dog jumped inside with obvious familiarity. He insists on accompanying you, Ethan said. Keeper has flown with your brother many times. Will his presence affect the ship's performance? On the contrary. Keeper's neural modifications allow him to serve as a secondary interface, monitoring both your condition and the craft's systems. He can detect stress patterns that might indicate impending pilot error. Cole looked down at the dog, who had settled beside the pilot's chair with practiced ease. You've done this before, haven't you, boy? Keeper's tail thumped once against the deck, an unmistakably affirmative response. Very well, Cole said. Let's see what this thing can do. The launch was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Instead of the violent acceleration he expected, the craft simply departed. One moment they were sitting in the underground hangar. The next, they were rising through what appeared to be solid rock. Cole watched through the ship's displays as layers of stone parted before them like water, revealing a vertical shaft that led to the surface. Emergency exit, Ethan's voice said through the craft's communication system. The main entrance would be too visible for daytime departure. They emerged from the mountainside through an opening that sealed itself behind them, leaving no trace of their passage. The craft hovered for a moment above the snow-covered peaks, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to any observers below. "How do we look?" Cole asked. "Undetectable to conventional sensors," Nix replied from the base. "Hunter technology might still pose a threat, but you appear to be clear for the moment." Cole focused on the route he'd plotted, feeling the craft respond to his intentions with fluid grace. They dropped into a valley between peaks, following the terrain at speeds that should have been terrifying, but somehow felt natural. The ship's intelligence anticipated obstacles and adjusted course microseconds before Cole's conscious mind registered the need for change. They flew in silence for the first hour, Cole gradually learning to trust the craft's capabilities while Keeper monitored their progress with alert attention. The dog's presence was oddly reassuring, a familiar constant in an experience that redefined everything Cole thought he knew about flight. "Contact," Keeper said suddenly, and Cole realized with shock that the dog had spoken in his mind, using the same telepathic communication the Watchers employed. What kind of contact? Cole asked, accessing sensor data that flowed directly into his consciousness. "Hunter Patrol. 2 ships, approximately 30 miles ahead, moving in search pattern." Cole felt his heart rate spike, but forced himself to remain calm. Panic would only impair his ability to communicate with the craft. "Can we avoid them?" "Possible. Alternate route through Cascade Valley adds 20 minutes to flight time, but maintains terrain masking." "Do it." The ship changed course without perceptible deceleration, diving deeper into the mountains and following a route that kept them hidden behind ridgelines and peaks. Through the craft's sensors, Cole could track the hunter ships, sleek, angular vessels that moved with predatory efficiency through the sky above their hiding place. "They're scanning," Keeper reported. "Quantum resonance sweeps exactly as the Watchers predicted. Are we hidden?" "For now. But if they expand their search pattern," Cole didn't need the dog to finish the thought. They were playing a deadly game of hide-and-seek, with an enemy whose technology was superior to their own. Discovery would mean certain death, just as it had for Michael. How much further to Denver? 93 miles. Current course will take us there in 1 hour, 47 minutes. Too long. Cole could feel the hunter ships adjusting their search pattern, moving closer to the valley that concealed them. Soon they would be trapped, forced to choose between revealing their position and abandoning the mission, unless they could find another way. "Keeper," Cole said, an idea forming in his mind. "Your neural modifications, can you interface directly with the craft's systems?" "Yes. Direct bioneural link is possible but risky." "What kind of risks?" "Information overload. Possible feedback damage to both biological and artificial systems." Cole weighed the options, feeling the pressure of the approaching hunter ships like a physical weight. Sometimes the only way forward was through the danger rather than around it. "Do it," he said. "Link with the ship. I need every advantage we can get." Keeper moved closer to the pilot's chair, and Cole felt the dog's consciousness merge with both his own and the craft's intelligence. The sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, he could perceive the world through 3 different sets of senses simultaneously, processing information at speeds that should have been impossible for human cognition, but it also revealed something else. Through the enhanced sensor net, he could see the hunter ship's blind spots, the gaps in their coverage that a skilled pilot might exploit. "There," he whispered, seeing the path that would take them safely past the enemy. "Hold on, Keeper. This is going to be interesting." The neural link with Keeper and the craft created a fusion of consciousness that transcended anything Cole had imagined possible. Through the enhanced perception, he could feel the hunter ship's search patterns like pressure waves against his skin, see their blind spots as clearly as physical obstacles, and anticipate their movements with uncanny accuracy. The craft responded to his intentions before he fully formed them, dancing through the mountain valleys with impossible grace. They slipped past the hunter patrol using a route that took them within 200 yards of the enemy vessels, close enough that Cole could see details of their construction through the craft's sensors. The hunter ships were beautiful in their own alien way, all flowing curves and organic lines that suggested they had been grown rather than built. But there was something predatory about their design, a sense of contained violence that made Cole's skin crawl. "Clear," Keeper reported as they emerged from the danger zone. Hunter ship's continuing search pattern to the east. Cole allowed himself a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. Through their shared consciousness, he could feel the strain the neural link was placing on Keeper. The dog's enhanced brain was working at its absolute limits to process the multiple data streams, and Cole knew they couldn't maintain the connection much longer without risking permanent damage to all three participants. "How much further?" he asked. 26 miles. 11 minutes at current speed. They crested a ridge, and the Denver monitoring station came into view through the craft's displays. Cole's relief immediately turned to alarm. The facility looked nothing like the hidden installation he'd left behind in Montana, where there should have been carefully concealed entrances and subtle signs of technology. He saw obvious signs of excavation and construction. Heavy machinery sat abandoned around what appeared to be a massive dig site, and the entire area was littered with debris. "That's not right," Cole said, bringing the craft to a hover behind a rock formation. "The station is supposed to be hidden." "Something is wrong," Keeper agreed, his mental voice strained with the effort of maintaining the neural link. "The facility has been exposed, deliberately revealed." Cole studied the scene below, his enhanced tactical knowledge raising alarm bells. "It's a trap. Someone wanted us to come here. We should leave immediately," Keeper urged. "This position is indefensible." But something nagged at Cole's consciousness, a detail that didn't fit the trap scenario. Among the abandoned equipment, he could see what looked like a hastily constructed shelter, and near it, a figure moving with the careful deliberation of someone trying to remain hidden. "There's someone down there," he said. "A survivor, Hunter prisoner. Bait for the trap, maybe. Or maybe someone who escaped and is waiting for rescue." Cole made a decision that he knew was probably foolish but felt necessary. "I'm going down for a closer look." Inadvisable. Risk of capture or death approaches certainty. I can't leave without knowing. If there's a chance someone survived, the craft descended through his will, staying hidden behind terrain features while bringing them closer to the excavation site. As they approached, details became clearer through the enhanced senses. The figure below was human, definitely, but something about their movements suggested injury or extreme fatigue. They were searching through the debris with desperate urgency, as if looking for something specific. Cole brought the craft down in a hidden clearing about half a mile from the dig site. "I'm going in on foot," he said. "Better chance of staying hidden, and if it is a trap, at least you and the ship can escape." "I accompany you," Keeper said, already moving toward the craft's exit. "You're barely holding the neural link together as it is. You need to—" "I accompany you," the dog repeated with absolute finality. They left the craft hidden in a grove of pine trees, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to casual observation. Cole carried his rifle and basic survival gear, while Keeper trotted ahead with his enhanced senses, alert for any sign of danger. The approach to the dig site took nearly 30 minutes of careful movement through terrain that offered minimal cover. As they drew closer, Cole could see that the excavation was massive, easily the size of several football fields, dug down to a depth of at least 50 feet. At the bottom of the pit, the twisted remains of what had once been the Denver monitoring station lay exposed like the bones of some prehistoric creature. The technology that should have been hidden and protected was scattered across the excavation floor, most of it obviously destroyed. The figure they'd spotted from the air was a woman, probably in her 50s, wearing the kind of outdoor gear that suggested she'd been living rough for some time. She was systematically searching through the wreckage, occasionally pausing to examine pieces of equipment before discarding them and moving on. "Dr. Sarah Chen," Keeper said quietly, his enhanced memory providing identification. "Senior technician assigned to Denver Station. Officially reported dead 3 weeks ago." Cole studied the woman through his rifle scope, noting the careful way she moved and the fact that she seemed to know exactly what she was looking for. If she's been hiding here for 3 weeks, why expose herself now? Unknown. But her presence suggests the station's destruction was not total. She may have salvaged critical components. They worked their way closer, using the excavation's rim for concealment. When they were within 100 yards, the woman suddenly looked up directly at their position, as if she'd sensed their presence. Instead of fleeing or calling out, she made a specific hand gesture, 3 fingers held against her temple, then pointed skyward. Recognition signal, Cole said, accessing his downloaded knowledge. She's identifying herself as network personnel, or she knows the codes because she helped plan the attack. Cole considered the possibility, then made another decision based more on instinct than logic. He stood up slowly, keeping his rifle ready, but not aimed directly at the woman, and called out in a voice that would carry across the excavation. "Dr. Chen? I'm Cole Rafferty, Michael Rafferty's brother." The woman's reaction was immediate and genuine, relief so profound it was visible from 100 yards away. She raised both hands to show they were empty, then called back, "Thank God, I was beginning to think no one was left." Cole and Keeper worked their way down into the excavation, alert for any sign of ambush. But as they drew closer to Dr. Chen, it became clear that her exhaustion and desperation were real. She looked like someone who had been living on adrenaline and hope for far too long. "Dr. Chen," Cole said as they reached the bottom of the pit, "what happened here?" "They came 4 days ago," she said, her voice hoarse with fatigue. "Not just hunters, humans too. They knew exactly where to dig, exactly what systems to target. Someone gave them detailed schematics of the facility. You've been hiding here for 4 days. Longer. I was off-site when the attack began, came back to find," she gestured at the destruction around them. "But I managed to save this." From a concealed cache in the wreckage, she produced a metallic cylinder about the size of a thermos bottle. "Core memory unit from the primary database. Everything we've learned about hunter technology over the past 30 years, ship designs, weapons capabilities, tactical preferences. It's all here." Cole felt his heart rate spike. The information in that cylinder could be the key to Earth's defense against the invasion. "Why didn't you take it to another station?" "Because there are no other stations," Dr. Chen said quietly. "I've been monitoring communications. Every facility in the network has gone dark. We're the last ones left." The words hit Cole like a physical blow. "All of them? Even the primary station? I lost contact with Montana yesterday. Whatever's happening, it's accelerating." Cole felt the weight of cosmic failure settling on his shoulders. The network his brother had died protecting was gone, leaving Earth blind and defenseless against an enemy that was already moving against them. But then Keeper barked once, a sharp sound that carried urgent warning. "Aircraft approaching," the dog said in Cole's mind. "Hunter configuration. Multiple contacts." Cole looked up to see dark shapes moving across the sky above the excavation, sleek vessels that moved with the organic grace he'd observed in the patrol ships. But these were larger, more heavily armed, and they were converging on the dig site with obvious hostile intent. "They've been waiting," Dr. Chen said with grim understanding, "using the site as bait to draw out any survivors." "How many?" Cole asked. 6 ships. Weapons active. Time to impact 90 seconds. Cole's mind raced through possibilities, all of them bad. They were trapped in an open excavation with no cover and no way to reach their hidden craft before the hunter ships arrived. The tactical situation was hopeless, the kind of scenario that military planners called a no-win situation. But as he watched the approaching ships, Cole remembered something from the downloaded knowledge. A detail about hunter psychology that might offer the slimmest chance of survival. "Dr. Chen," he said urgently, "that memory core, does it contain information about hunter command structures?" "Everything we know about their military organization, yes. Then we might have one chance. Hunters respect individual combat prowess. If we can make them see us as worthy opponents rather than simple prey, you want to challenge them to single combat." Dr. Chen stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "I want to buy us time to get to the ship. Keeper, can you relay a message to the incoming craft? Communication possible through universal protocols. But hunter response unpredictable. Sometimes unpredictable is better than certainly dead. Cole looked up at the approaching ships, now close enough that he could hear the whisper of their alien engines. Tell them that the Guardian of the Montana Station challenges their strongest warrior to honorable combat. Winner takes the memory core and the lives of the defeated. Cole, Dr. Chen said urgently, you don't understand. These aren't honorable soldiers. They're executioners. Maybe, but right now they're our only hope. Keeper transmitted the challenge, and for a moment the approaching ships slowed their attack approach. Cole could almost feel alien minds considering his proposal, weighing the entertainment value of single combat against the efficiency of simple extermination. Then, one of the ships separated from the group and descended toward the excavation floor, its weapons powered down but not withdrawn. A hatch opened in its hull, and something emerged that made Cole's blood run cold. The hunter warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body covered in what looked like living armor that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. Its face was hidden behind a mask that somehow conveyed both intelligence and predatory hunger. And it carried weapons that seemed to bend light around their edges. Challenge accepted. Human, it said in a voice like grinding stone. Prepare to die with honor. Cole checked his rifle and stepped forward to meet his fate, knowing that everything, Dr. Chen's life, the memory core, and possibly the future of 2 species, depended on the outcome of the next few minutes. The hunter-warrior moved with fluid grace across the excavation floor, its living armor rippling with each step like water disturbed by wind. Cole had faced dangerous men before, drunks with knives, desperate criminals with nothing to lose, even a few genuine killers during his younger, wilder years. But this was something entirely different. The alien predator radiated competence and lethal intent in equal measure, and Cole could feel his human instinct screaming at him to run. Instead, he stepped forward to meet his opponent, rifle ready, but pointed at the ground in a gesture of respect for the formal combat he'd initiated. The other hunter ships had taken positions around the rim of the excavation, their crews no doubt eager to witness what they probably considered an amusing execution. Cole tried not to think about what would happen to Dr. Chen and Keeper if he failed. You are the one called Guardian? The hunter asked, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple vocal cords working in concert. You claim responsibility for the Montana facility? I do. Cole's voice sounded steadier than he felt. And you are? Zephron, blade singer of the third Talon, harvester of 100 worlds. The alien tilted its head in what might have been a bow. Your challenge shows courage, human. It will make your death more satisfying. The terms, Cole said, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Single combat, winner takes all. Your word of honor that my companions will be spared if I fall, agreed. Though spared may not mean what you hope. They will live long enough to witness the fate of your species. The hunter's weapons were unlike anything Cole had ever seen. Blades that seemed to exist partially in normal space, and partially somewhere else, their edges flickering in and out of visibility. When Zephron moved them through practice forms, they left trails of distorted light that hurt to look at directly. Cole's rifle felt pathetically inadequate by comparison, but it was the weapon he knew best. His grandfather had taught him to shoot when he was 8 years old, and Michael had refined those skills during their hunting trips through these same mountains. He was good, better than good, but good enough to face an alien warrior with technology centuries beyond human capability. Keeper, he said quietly, knowing the dog's enhanced hearing would pick up his words even from across the excavation. Whatever happens, protect Dr. Chen. Get that memory core back to the Watchers. Understood, came the mental reply. But there may be another option. Before Cole could ask what Keeper meant, Zephron raised his weapons and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the dig site. Let combat begin. The hunter moved faster than anything Cole had ever seen, not quite a blur, but close to it. The alien crossed 20 yards of broken ground in what felt like 2 heartbeats, its flickering blades seeking Cole's throat with surgical precision. Only desperate instinct saved him, throwing himself sideways as the energy weapons passed through the space his head had occupied a millisecond before. Cole rolled, came up on one knee, and fired 3 quick shots at center mass. The bullets struck Zephron's armor and simply vanished, absorbed by whatever technology protected the alien warrior. The hunter paused, tilted its head as if amused by the futility of conventional weapons, then resumed its attack with renewed intensity. For the next several minutes, Cole's world contracted to a desperate dance of survival. He used every trick his grandfather had taught him about mountain fighting, using terrain features for cover, staying mobile, forcing his opponent to attack uphill when possible. The excavation's broken ground worked in his favor, providing obstacles that slowed the hunter's incredible speed without significantly hampering his own movement. But it was a losing battle, and both combatants knew it. Cole's ammunition was limited, and none of his shots seemed to have any effect on the alien's armor. Meanwhile, Zephron's energy blades came closer with each exchange, leaving scorched marks on the rocks where Cole had been standing moments before. "You fight well for prey," Zephron called out during a brief pause in the action. "Your death will be remembered with honor." "Not dead yet," Cole replied, checking his ammunition. 4 rounds left in the magazine, 2 spare magazines in his jacket. Enough for perhaps 90 seconds of fighting, if he was careful and lucky. True, but inevitable. Your weapons cannot penetrate Talon armor, and your speed cannot match Talon enhancement. Submit now, and your end will be swift. Cole considered the offer for exactly 1 second before rejecting it. Swift death was still death, and Dr. Chen would still face whatever horrors the hunters had planned for humanity. Besides, something Keeper had said was nagging at the back of his mind. Another option. What had the dog meant? The answer came as Cole dodged another attack, his enhanced memory finally accessing the relevant information from the downloaded Watcher knowledge. Hunter armor, for all its advanced technology, had one critical vulnerability. It was designed to protect against energy weapons and projectile impacts, but it relied on the warrior's natural reflexes to avoid environmental hazards. Cole smiled grimly and began working his way toward the center of the excavation, where the remains of the monitoring station's power core lay scattered among the debris. The Watchers had used fusion technology to power their equipment, clean, efficient, and under normal circumstances, completely safe. But if the containment protocols could be disrupted, running human, Zephron taunted, following Cole's retreat with predatory patience. "There is nowhere to hide in this pit." "Not hiding," Cole said, reaching the twisted wreckage of what had been the station's primary generator. Improvising, he fired his remaining rounds not at the hunter, but at specific components of the damaged fusion system, coolant lines, magnetic containment rings, safety interlocks that had been designed to prevent exactly what Cole was attempting to trigger. His grandfather had always said that sometimes the best way to deal with a bigger, stronger opponent was to change the rules of the fight. Zephron realized what Cole was attempting a moment too late. The hunter-warrior leapt forward, energy blades seeking to end the combat, before the human could complete his sabotage. But Cole had timed his actions perfectly. As the alien closed the distance, Cole fired his last shot into the fusion core's destabilized containment. Matrix. The explosion wasn't nuclear. The Watchers were too careful for that, but it was substantial enough to turn the center of the excavation into a crater of superheated rock and twisted metal. The hunter's armor protected Zephron from the initial blast, but the warrior was caught off guard by the environmental nature of the attack. Instead of deflecting energy or absorbing impact, the armor simply conducted the intense heat directly to its wearer. Zephron screamed, a sound like tearing metal that echoed off the excavation walls, and stumbled backward, his living armor now working against him as it became a conductor for temperatures that would have instantly killed an unprotected human. The hunter-warrior had perhaps 10 seconds before the heat overwhelmed even his enhanced physiology. Cole didn't waste those seconds. He sprinted across the devastated excavation floor toward the spot where Dr. Chen and Keeper waited, diving behind a pile of debris just as the secondary explosions began. The hunter ships above opened fire immediately, their weapons turning the crater into a furnace of destruction. But their shots came too late to save their fallen comrade. When the bombardment finally stopped, Cole raised his head cautiously. Zephron lay motionless in the center of the crater, his once magnificent armor now a twisted shell of cooling metal. The other hunter ships hovered in apparent indecision. Their warrior culture had rules about honorable combat, and Cole had technically won, according to the terms they'd agreed to. "Impressive," came a new voice from one of the ships, speaking through external communicators. "The human shows unexpected cunning." "Very well. The terms are honored. You and your companions may depart." Cole didn't trust the alien's word for a moment, but he also knew they had perhaps minutes before the hunters decided that honoring their agreement was less important than eliminating witnesses. "Can you move?" he asked Dr. Chen quietly. "Yes, but Cole, that was insane. Fusion cores aren't supposed to be weaponized. My grandfather used to say that any tool could be a weapon if you were desperate enough." Cole helped her to her feet, noting that she still clutched the precious memory core. "Right now, we need to get to our ship before they change their minds about letting us go." Keeper had already started moving toward the excavation's rim, following a route that would take them to the hidden craft. The dog's enhanced senses were clearly tracking the hunter ship's positions, alerting him to any change in their tactical stance. As they climbed out of the dig site, Cole felt a mixture of triumph and terror that made his hands shake. He'd won the fight, but barely, and only through desperate improvisation rather than superior skill. The hunter-warrior had been toying with him for most of the combat. If Zephron had taken the challenge seriously from the beginning, Cole would have died in the first exchange. "The ship's location?" Dr. Chen asked as they reached the rim, half a mile through the trees. "Stay low, stay quiet, and pray those ships don't decide that honor is less important than tactical advantage." They made it to the craft without incident, though Cole could feel the hunter ships tracking their movement. The aliens were keeping their word, but just barely. As soon as they were aboard and the craft's stealth systems activated, Cole felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Destination?" Keeper asked as the ship lifted off. "Montana. We need to warn the Watchers and figure out what comes next." "The network is gone," Dr. Chen said quietly as they gained altitude. "Earth is blind. When the main invasion force arrives, then we'll have to find another way to fight them," Cole said with more confidence than he felt. "That memory core contains 30 years of intelligence about hunter capabilities. Maybe the Watchers can use it to develop new strategies." Through the craft's sensors, he could see the hunter ships finally departing the excavation site, their mission apparently complete. They'd eliminated another monitoring station and gathered intelligence about human capabilities. From their perspective, it had probably been a successful operation, but they'd also learned something they might not have expected, that humans could be dangerously unpredictable when cornered. As Cole guided the craft toward home, he found himself hoping that surprise might be enough to make a difference in the larger conflict to come. The flight back to Montana would give them time to plan, to process what they'd learned, and to prepare for what might be humanity's last stand. Cole looked at the memory core in Dr. Chen's hands and allowed himself one moment of hope. Sometimes the smallest advantages could tip the balance in impossible situations. His grandfather had taught him that too. The journey back to Montana passed in tense silence, broken only by Dr. Chen's occasional updates as she analyzed the data stored in the memory core. Through the craft's bioneural interface, Cole could feel Keeper monitoring their surroundings with heightened alertness. The dog's enhanced senses picking up electromagnetic signatures that suggested hunter activity throughout the region. "How bad is it?" Cole asked as they approached the hidden facility. "Worse than we thought," Dr. Chen replied, her face illuminated by the holographic displays emerging from the memory core. "The hunters haven't just been destroying monitoring stations, they've been studying them, learning our technology, understanding our defensive capabilities. What does that mean for the invasion timeline? It means they're ready. The data suggests the main fleet could arrive within days rather than months. Cole felt his stomach drop. Through the neural link, he sensed Keeper's agreement with Dr. Chen's assessment. The dog had access to communication frequencies that even Cole's enhanced knowledge couldn't fully interpret. And what he was hearing painted a picture of accelerating alien activity across the planet. They descended through the hidden shaft into the Montana facility's hangar, where the three watchers waited with obvious anxiety. As soon as the craft settled onto its landing platform, Ethan stepped forward to greet them. The network, he asked without preamble. Gone, Cole said simply. All of it. We're the last functioning station. The emotional impact of his words was immediate and profound. Cole could feel the watchers' grief like a physical weight, not just for the loss of their monitoring capability, but for the humans who had died defending the stations. 30 years of careful preparation, eliminated in a matter of weeks. However, Dr. Chen said, stepping forward with the memory core, we recovered this from Denver. Complete intelligence archive on hunter capabilities and tactics. Solis moved quickly to interface with the device, his long fingers dancing over its surface as he accessed the stored information. What Cole saw in the Watcher's expression gave him his first real hope since the crisis began. This is comprehensive, Solis said, his mental voice carrying excitement. Ship designs, weapons specifications, tactical doctrine, everything we need to mount an effective defense. Defense. Nick stepped closer, her warrior's instincts clearly engaged. 3 Watchers and 2 humans against an invasion fleet? Not just us, Cole said, an idea forming in his mind. The memory core contains contact information for government officials who know about the network, doesn't it? Yes, Dr. Chen confirmed. Military commanders, intelligence officials, selected political leaders. The people who would need to coordinate a planetary defense. Then we warn them. Share the intelligence. Give Earth's military the tools they need to fight back. Ethan's expression carried deep skepticism. Your species' military technology is centuries behind hunter capabilities. Even with our intelligence, the disparity in power is exactly what the hunters are counting on, Cole interrupted. They expect us to fight them like they fought your people. Ship against ship, technology against technology. But humans don't always fight fair. He moved to the facility's main display, calling up a tactical overview of Earth's military assets. We can't match their firepower, but we don't have to. We just need to make the cost of invasion higher than they're willing to pay. Explain, Nick said, her interest clearly engaged. Asymmetric warfare. Guerrilla tactics. Use their expectations against them. Cole highlighted key military installations and strategic choke points on the global map. The hunters have been observing us for months, learning how we fight conventional wars. But they've never seen us fight for survival as a species. Keeper barked once and moved to a communication console, his enhanced neural interface allowing him to access systems that even Cole couldn't fully understand. Incoming transmission, the dog reported. Multiple sources. Military frequencies. The main display filled with urgent messages from governments around the world. Reports of unidentified aircraft, electromagnetic anomalies, communication blackouts in remote areas. The pattern was clear. Hunter forces were positioning themselves for a coordinated global assault. They're here, Dr. Chen whispered. The advance force is already in position. Cole felt everything clicking into place in his mind. Not just the downloaded Watcher knowledge, but 40 years of observation about human nature, military strategy, and the psychology of predators. How long before the main fleet arrives? Solis consulted the memory core data, cross-referencing it with current electromagnetic readings. 18 to 24 hours. Then we have one chance, Cole said. Keeper, can you establish secure communication with the contact list from the memory core? Affirmative. Quantum encrypted channels will prevent hunter interception. Do it. And Dr. Chen, I need you to prepare intelligence packages, everything from the memory core that could help coordinate a defense. Cole, Ethan said quietly, even if you succeed in warning your governments, The disparity in technology won't matter if we don't fight the way they expect us to. Cole turned to face the three watchers, seeing in their ancient faces the weight of 1,000 defeats across the galaxy. Your people fought honorably. They met the hunters in open battle, matching technology against technology, warrior against warrior. And they lost every time. You propose something different. I propose something human. Cole called up historical data about Earth's military conflicts, highlighting asymmetric victories throughout human history. Small forces defeating larger ones through superior tactics, knowledge of terrain, and willingness to break conventional rules of engagement. The facility's communication system came online with a cascade of priority signals. One by one, government officials and military commanders appeared on the display screens, faces Cole recognized from the contact database. Men and women who had been briefed on the alien alliance but never expected to face an invasion scenario. Ladies and gentlemen, Cole said, his voice carrying to command centers around the world, this is Guardian Station, Montana. We have a situation. Over the next hour, Cole and Dr. Chen briefed the planet's leadership on the scope of the hunter threat, sharing intelligence that redefined everything the military thought they knew about potential extraterrestrial conflict. The initial reactions ranged from disbelief to panic, but gradually, as the evidence mounted, he saw the same transformation he'd experienced himself, the moment when the impossible became merely difficult. The question, said General Martinez from NORAD, is whether conventional weapons can damage their ships at all. Limited effectiveness, Dr. Chen replied, referencing the memory core data. But there are vulnerabilities. Hunter technology relies on predictable energy signatures and conventional attack vectors. What about nuclear weapons? Asked Admiral Chen from the Pacific Fleet, potentially effective but only at close range. Hunter shields can deflect most projectile weapons, but they're designed primarily for ship-to-ship combat in space. Cole watched the faces on the screens as the planetary leadership processed the intelligence, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination that had driven him to accept his role as Guardian. These were people who had spent their careers preparing for threats they could understand, human enemies with human limitations. And they faced something that challenged every assumption about warfare and survival. There's something else, Cole said, calling up the final piece of intelligence from the memory core. The hunters aren't just invading Earth for conquest. They're harvesting. The silence that followed his words was profound and terrible. On screens around the world, the faces of Earth's defenders reflected the understanding that they weren't just fighting for political control or territorial sovereignty. They were fighting for the continued existence of the human species. Then we make them pay for every life, General Martinez said quietly. What do you need from us? The next 16 hours transformed the Montana facility into the nerve center of humanity's first interplanetary war. Cole found himself coordinating with military commanders across 6 continents, sharing tactical intelligence while the Watchers worked frantically to adapt their technology for human use. The memory core had revealed crucial weaknesses in hunter defenses, but exploiting them would require precision timing and absolute coordination. Beijing reports hunter scouts over the South China Sea, Dr. Chen announced from her position at the communications array. Moscow has electromagnetic anomalies in the Urals. They're positioning for simultaneous strikes on major population centers. Cole studied the global tactical display, watching red indicators multiply across the planet's surface. The pattern was methodical, professional, exactly what he'd expect from an enemy that had perfected planetary conquest across multiple star systems. Traditional deployment, Nix observed, her warrior's experience evident in how quickly she read the hunter strategy. Overwhelming force applied to break resistance before it can organize, which means they still don't understand what they're facing, Cole said. Through the neural link with Keeper, he could monitor secure communications from military units worldwide, watching as Earth's forces implemented the unconventional tactics he'd proposed. General Martinez, what's the status on Operation Underdog? The NORAD commander's voice crackled through the quantum-encrypted channel. All assets in position. Nuclear submarines have moved to designated coordinates. Strike aircraft are maintaining radio silence at predetermined holding patterns. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Cole felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders, not just for the humans under his coordination, but for the three ancient beings who had placed their trust in his species' unorthodox approach to warfare. The Watchers had fought honorably for millennia and lost every battle. They were betting everything on humanity's willingness to fight dirty. Keeper, what's our status on the atmospheric craft? All three vessels operational. Watcher modifications complete. Human pilots have achieved basic proficiency with bioneural interfaces. The modification process had been Dr. Chen's idea, adapting the alien craft for human pilots by installing simplified control systems. Alongside the advanced bioneural interfaces, the compromise reduced the ship's maximum capabilities, but made them accessible to experienced military aviators. 3 craft wasn't much against an invasion fleet, but they would serve as force multipliers for the larger strategy. Contact, Solis announced suddenly, his long fingers dancing across control surfaces as new data flooded the facility's sensors. Hunter main fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Distance, 600,000 kilometers and closing. The main display shifted to show space above Earth, where points of light were materializing like malevolent stars. Cole's enhanced knowledge allowed him to interpret the readings. 73 ships of various classes, from massive dreadnoughts to swift attack craft. Enough firepower to reduce Earth's surface to molten slag within hours. Fleet composition matches historical patterns, Ethan said grimly. Command ships, heavy assault vessels, troop transports, they intend complete occupation rather than simple destruction. How long until they reach engagement range? 4 hours to atmospheric entry, 6 hours to surface deployment. Cole opened communication channels to military commands worldwide. All stations, this is Guardian. Operation Underdog is now active. Repeat, Operation Underdog is active. Across the planet, Earth's defenders began implementing a strategy that violated every principle of conventional military doctrine. Instead of massing forces to meet the enemy head-on, they scattered and hid. Nuclear submarines submerged to maximum depth and went silent. Air forces dispersed to hidden airfields and waited. Ground forces melted into urban environments and wilderness areas, carrying weapons designed not for open battle, but for harassment and sabotage. They're not responding as expected, Dr. Chen reported, monitoring Hunter communications through the facility's sensors. The fleet commanders are confused by the lack of visible resistance. Cole smiled grimly. The Hunters had conquered worlds where civilizations met them in honorable battle, matching fleets against fleets in the dark between stars. They'd never faced an enemy that simply refused to provide convenient targets for destruction. First wave entering atmosphere, Keeper reported. 18 ships, assault configuration. Primary targets appear to be major cities. Let them come, Cole said. All units maintain position. Do not engage until the second wave deploys. The next 2 hours tested every nerve on the planet. Hunter assault ships descended on Earth's major cities, their weapons reducing empty government buildings and abandoned military bases to rubble. But the devastating attacks struck targets that had been evacuated hours earlier, destroying infrastructure rather than eliminating resistance. Second wave deploying, Ethan announced. Troop transports beginning surface operations. This was the moment Cole had been waiting for. The Hunters' tactical doctrine called for securing landing zones before deploying their main force, standard practice when facing conventional opposition. But Earth's defenders weren't following conventional patterns. All units, Operation Stinger is now active, Cole broadcast to the global network. Repeat, Operation Stinger is active. Around the world, Earth's hidden forces struck simultaneously. Nuclear submarines launched missiles at Hunter ships from underwater positions the aliens couldn't have predicted. Stealth aircraft emerged from concealment to attack landing zones with precision munitions. Ground forces hit isolated hunter units with everything from improvised explosives to stolen alien weapons. Recovered from destroyed monitoring stations, the attacks weren't intended to destroy the invasion fleet. Earth's forces lacked the firepower for that kind of direct confrontation. Instead, they were designed to create chaos, confusion, and uncertainty in an enemy that had grown accustomed to predictable resistance. Hunter fleet responding, Nix reported, with something that might have been approval. Command ships moving to support ground forces. Fleet formation becoming dispersed. Perfect, Cole said. Dr. Chen launched the atmospheric craft. Target the isolated command ship. Cole, Ethan said quietly. Even with our modifications, 3 ships against a Hunter dreadnought isn't about winning, Cole finished. It's about sending a message. The facility's hangar doors opened, and the 3 modified atmospheric craft rose into the Montana sky. Through the neural link, Cole could feel the human pilots' determination as they guided their vessels toward an engagement that none of them expected to survive. But survival wasn't the point. The point was proving that humanity wouldn't go quietly into extinction. Guardian to all units, Cole broadcast one final time. Make them remember us. 3 months after the Hunter fleet departed Earth's solar system, Cole stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Montana facility, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and amber. The view was the same as it had been before the invasion, but everything else had changed in ways both profound and subtle. The battle itself had lasted only 18 hours, but those 18 hours had redefined humanity's place in the galaxy. The asymmetric strategy had worked better than anyone had dared hope, not because Earth's forces had destroyed the Hunter fleet, but because they had made the cost of conquest unacceptably high. For the first time in their conquering history, the Hunters had faced an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. The final casualty reports, Dr. Chen said, approaching with a tablet containing information that Cole both needed and dreaded to see. Global military losses, 43,000. Civilian casualties, 112,000. Infrastructure damage, extensive but repairable. The numbers were staggering by human standards, but Cole had learned to think in cosmic terms. Compared to what the Hunters had done to other worlds, total population extinction and planetary sterilization, Earth had gotten off remarkably lightly. The price of teaching the galaxy that humanity was not easily harvested, and the Hunter losses. 17 ships destroyed, including 2 command vessels. Estimated crew casualties 12,000. More importantly, they lost face in front of whatever galactic community they answer to. Cole nodded, understanding the deeper implications. The Hunters' power had always rested partly on reputation, the certainty that resistance was futile, that worlds would fall quickly and completely to their overwhelming force. Earth had broken that reputation, proving that even technologically superior enemies could be made to bleed. Keeper trotted onto the observation deck, his amber eyes bright with intelligence that still amazed Cole, even after months of partnership. The dog's presence had become a constant comfort during the long reconstruction process, a reminder of the bonds that could form between species when trust replaced suspicion. Communications from the Galactic Accord, Keeper said, his mental voice carrying notes of excitement. Formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign world. Invitation to join the alliance of free species. The Galactic Accord. Cole was still adjusting to the reality that Earth was no longer alone in the universe, that there were other species who had successfully resisted Hunter expansion and formed a mutual defense pact. The Watcher's long isolation was ending, and humanity was being welcomed into a community of survivors. What did we tell them? Cole asked. That Earth's representatives would consider the offer, Dr. Chen replied. The Security Council is still debating the implications of formal galactic citizenship. Cole smiled at that. Trust human politicians to turn first contact into a committee discussion. But then again, careful deliberation was probably wise when accepting membership in an interstellar alliance. The next decisions would shape humanity's future for generations to come. Ethan emerged from the facility's interior, his tall form moving with the grace that marked all watchers, but now touched with something Cole had rarely seen in the ancient beings: hope. The three survivors were no longer the last of their kind. Contact with the Galactic Accord had revealed other Watcher refugees scattered across distant worlds, kept hidden by the same caution that had protected the Montana facility. "The morning briefing," Ethan said, his voice carrying warmth that would have been impossible before the invasion. Representatives from 12 species wished to speak with Earth's Guardian. Guardian. The title still felt strange, but Cole had grown into it over the past months. He was no longer just the man who'd operated the monitoring station. He'd become Earth's official liaison to the galactic community, the bridge between human and alien perspectives that would be crucial for successful integration. "Any word from the deep space monitoring stations?" Cole asked, all quiet. "The hunters appear to have withdrawn to their core territories. Our analysts believe they're reassessing their expansion strategy in light of Earth's resistance. That was the best outcome they could have hoped for, not just survival, but breathing room. Time for humanity to adapt, to learn, to prepare for whatever challenges the galaxy might present." The monitoring network was being rebuilt with new technology provided by Accord allies, creating a defensive grid that would make future surprise attacks nearly impossible. Cole walked to the edge of the observation deck, looking out over wilderness that seemed both familiar and transformed. Michael would have been proud to see how the crisis had brought out the best in both species: human ingenuity and determination coupled with Watcher wisdom and technology. The partnership that had begun in secret 30 years ago was now the foundation for Earth's future among the stars. "I've been thinking about my brother," Cole said quietly. "About all the years he spent alone up here, carrying the responsibility for protecting two worlds. He never got to see the outcome of his sacrifice." "Perhaps he did," Keeper said, his mental voice gentle with understanding. "The Watchers believe consciousness persists beyond physical death. Your brother's essence may be aware of what his dedication accomplished." Cole found comfort in the possibility, even if he couldn't entirely believe it. What mattered was that Michael's work had not been in vain. The Hidden Alliance had survived its greatest test and emerged stronger than ever. Dr. Chen joined him at the railing, her expression thoughtful as she gazed out at the mountains. "Any regrets about giving up your solitary life for all this cosmic responsibility?" Cole considered the question seriously. 3 months ago, he'd been a man running from connection, from purpose, from the possibility of loss. Now he was bonded to beings from another world, responsible for decisions that affected entire species, and more deeply connected to his fellow humans than he'd ever thought possible. "No regrets," he said finally. "For the first time in 40 years, I feel like I'm exactly where I belong." In the distance, one of the new atmospheric craft streaked across the sky, human pilots working alongside Watcher technology to patrol the skies that had once been threatened by alien invasion. The sight filled Cole with a satisfaction that went deeper than simple accomplishment. It was the satisfaction of purpose fulfilled, of a legacy worthy of the brother who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself, Keeper barked once, a sound of contentment that echoed off the mountain peaks. The sound seemed to say what Cole felt but couldn't quite express, that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships could achieve the impossible, and that courage was often found in the most unexpected places. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders they were only beginning to understand. But Earth was ready to meet whatever came next, protected by the alliance between species that had begun with a stray dog leading a lonely man through a blizzard to find his destiny. And that was enough.